Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about a very significant aspect of the Union Budget which was presented by Finance Minister on 1st of February. That is the green aspect, green budget now aiming to reduce the carbon intensity of the Indian economy, meeting clean energy targets and providing large-scale green job opportunities. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a slew of measures for green growth while presenting the Union Budget on Wednesday. This included initiatives related to green fuel, green farming, green mobility, green buildings and green equipment as well. Policies for the efficient use of energy across various sectors of the economy are also being implemented. Finance Minister announced an outlay of 19,700 crore rupees for the recently launched National Green Hydrogen Mission and 35,000 crore rupees for priority capital investment toward energy transition, net zero objectives and energy security by the Union Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Among a host of other measures, Finance Minister also announced viability gap funding for battery energy storage systems with a capacity of 4,000 megawatt hour in order to spur sustainable development. So today we're going to look at all these announcements which have been made by the Finance Minister in the budget and how will these announcements give a much more, fillip to the green aspect of the development, which we've been talking about, which the government has been talking about, and how will these, measures be implemented in various sectors. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Urmi Goswami is here with us, senior journalist, keeps a very close watch on all these developments vis-a-vis, the green aspect of the economy. Mr. Shirish Garud is also with us. He's Director, Renewable Energy Technologies at TERI. And Mr. Devin Narang is also joining us. He's the country head India of Sindicatum Renewable Energy. Welcome all of you to Sansad Television. I'll start straight away with you, Mr. Narang, because we would like to understand how does the industry view in terms of the steps which have been taken, the announcements which have been made by the Finance Minister, the allocations which have been made by the Finance Minister in various aspects. When we are talking about the green budget, is it enough? That's one. And are the focus areas the one which we require to focus on right now?
As you rightly already enumerated the figures which the Honorable Finance Minister has stated in the budget, I think these are very important developments. Firstly, what India needs is base load power to meet its power requirements. We are a fossil fuel dependent economy, and therefore, in order to promote base load power, it is very important that we have some kind of a mechanism which gives us electricity, around-the-clock electricity, using non-fossil fuel-based fuels. So green hydrogen being one, which he's spoken about, which you have mentioned. Pump storage is another one, which the budget has mentioned that they would give incentives. I think it's about 4,000 crores, something like that. They've talked about bioenergy, the biomass sector, which again gives you base load power. And one area which I was hoping that they would have announced is to go for small nuclear plants, 100 to 200 megawatts, which a new technology has come out. But I'm sure the government, after examining it technically, will announce that as well. Now, this is significant because solar and wind are intermittent sources of energy and they require some base load power for it to ride on. Now, let's just look at what you mentioned. The 13,500 crores viability gap funding from generating solar from Ladakh and, setting up a transmission and evacuation structure. So you can imagine the number of jobs this would create. That is one. The biomass collection she has spoken about, that would create a number of jobs again. So as far as we are concerned, we are very excited that the thrust towards India attaining a net zero 2070 is well on its way. The other interesting aspect, which a lot of people have not remarked, is the mangroves on the coast of India and wetlands. Okay. Now, this is very significant because, as experts on the panel will also tell you, that mangroves sequester more carbon than other trees. So it is not only, you do not reduce pollution only by moving away from fossil fuels, but also by sequestering carbon. Okay. So that is again an excellent move. And about the wetlands, I have not read the fine print, but I will read that what they propose to do over there.
Mhm.
So overall, it's excellent. It's very progressive, and I think we will, in years to come, the government will also announce measures to adopt newer technologies which are under development. And last but not the least, battery storage becomes a very critical aspect of providing round the clock renewable energy power. At this moment, the cost of storing energy in batteries is prohibitive for India.
Okay.
And as soon as scale comes in, I'm sure this will also become very reasonable and applicable. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Mr. Narang, stay with us. I'll come back to you again. Now, Urmi, I'd like to bring you in here. Of course, economy of scale is a very important aspect here when we're talking about renewable energy. But I'd like to ask you, when we look at these announcements which have been made in the budget on Wednesday by the finance minister vis-a-vis the green aspect, how much of a continuity do you see there? Because this is not the first time that the government has focused on, sustainable development, renewable energy, or green aspect of it. We've been talking about it. We've made international commitments as well. So when we look at, the push to green hydrogen, renewable energy aspect there as well, biomass also, the Gobardhan scheme, and viability gap funding as well. But does this give a sense that there is a continuity thread here?
Yes, it does. And I'll tell you the where the continuity lies. If you look at this year's budget speech, you'll realize green growth is identified as one of the 4 transformations, 4 pillars of the transformation. So it has transformative effect. And then when you're looking at the 7 guiding principles of the Saptrishi.
It is there, Saptrishi.
Yeah, again, green growth is there. This is actually the move for green from the margins to the center. And I think there is a need for us to have a mindset shift, which interestingly the budget has shown is that green is not just about energy. Green is actually about changing the basis. Green is a nice way of putting it, but it's actually about making things sustainable, being less of a lowering your footprint on the planet while maximizing the return. So you see that continuity. So your move, if you now look back to a budget like 7 years ago, you will see that move, bit by bit, green has now come to the center. There's an acknowledgement that this is one of those areas of transformative action. So yes, there is.
Okay.
2, when you look at the budget, like specific announcements, that 35,000 crore priority capital allocation, spending allocation.
Indeed.
That's, if you read the next line, it's actually on moving to net zero and energy security as put out by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, which basically means we are looking at non-electricity energy. So you are moving continuously on electricity, but you're now moving to non-electrical sources of energy as well, like non-electrical uses of energy. So that's where hydrogen comes in, that's where biofuels comes in, and Mr. Gaur will be able to tell you much more on that. But the fact of the matter remains that this is the continuity, that you are starting to look at this segment as much wider. Again, if you look at the mangrove initiative, it is no longer just about afforestation. You're being very specific. You're looking at adaptation. So there's greater fleshing out. But that is not to say that this is at a perfect stage. And there are reasons why it's not at a perfect stage. Because in many ways, we still need to understand green is about, not just about greening your energy. That is green. It is not just about energy. It is not just about reducing your footprint. It is also the other side of it. It is about growing while being less of a burden.
Okay.
And most importantly, it is about ensuring that those who have been left behind get a chance to be part of the system. Which is why when you look at something like mechanized sludge cleaning, doing away with manual labor is huge. It has implications even in terms of escaped gas, methane. You know, we don't think about it in those terms, but it also has a very huge socio-economic impact.
Indeed.
And those are, so we need to look beyond what we traditionally understand as it's not just energy transition, it is the transformation of our society and our economy.
Okay. So by green budget, or by a focus on green energy or green aspect of it, we don't only mean clean energy. There are other related aspects as well, as you and both Mr. Narang were pointing out. Mr. Shirish, I'd like to bring you in here, and make us understand this focus on green hydrogen, as Urmi was also referring to, focus on other sources of energy as well. Clean energy sources, moving away from the fossil fuel energy. That's one part, but the other part also. Now, one, both of them moving in tandem with each other, these things, and two, how do you think this will play out? The sources of energy like green hydrogen or biomass. How do you think it's going to play out in the future?
Well, when we started our renewable energy program per se, it was focused on solar energy. As a national solar energy mission, that was the starting point for climate change related national action plan on climate change. Slowly in 2015, it was added with small hydro or wind and biomass as the target for the program, which was increased from 20 gigawatt to 175 gigawatt of renewable energy per se. So, because solar was a low-hanging fruit, wind was a low-hanging fruit, but we have huge resources of bio-waste, particularly agri-waste, and we have seen this problem of agri-waste burning in the every winter. Then we also need to look at other energy utilization, which is mainly for heating, cooling, space heating, and other industrial heating and other applications, and for which fossil fuel like gas or oil, coal, etc. are used. So, if one is looking at now, when one is looking at net zero emissions by 2070, it is not electricity only is not going to suffice. Electricity is about 18% of our total energy.
So, other energy consumption needs will also have to be focused on.
Yes, other energy consumption needs to be more energy efficient and also less emission producing. So, one of the way we started is ethanol mixing in the petrol and diesel. Now that 10% we are looking at 20% mixing. So that there is a saving of 10% of petrol right now, and compared to other scenario, normal scenario. And secondly, there is also emission reduction because ethanol is from the agri waste and bio waste, etc. Same way, CNG is another major imported fuel which also producing emissions, and biogas is something which we can produce internally, and there again we are also avoiding the methane emissions because of agri waste or because of bio waste, gobar and others. So there are double advantage for going for these kind of things.
Okay.
So we are now, the budget is, if you look at the continuity aspect, what you mentioned, I think if you look at from this 2010 onwards, when major utilization of renewable energy for all the sectors started. Now this is definitely a next step where one is looking at renewable electricity with 24/7 availability, where intermittency is taken care by storage, both battery and pump hydro storage, so they are promoted. We are also looking at great solar energy and other energy, particularly solar exploitation in Ladakh, and which can be used in the mainland. So there are all aspects of energy or greening of activities
which will come into play and will have to be focused upon there as well. We'll bring in Mr. Narang again here as well. Mr. Narang, given the place where we are in this journey or a path to green growth, and the kind of announcements which have been made by the finance minister, from an industry perspective, since you're part of the industry and you'll be part of those stakeholders which will be implementing some of these steps in various aspects, what are the key areas or what are the key changes which we might see in the next 1 year when we are talking about these varied aspects of green growth and not just about clean energy?
First, I think one aspect which I forgot to mention is to achieve our net zero targets, the country needs something like more than $1 trillion, really $10 trillion. So in the next 1 year, if you ask me, what we expect the changes is that this dollars will come from overseas debt or equity. The country doesn't have the debt or equity to fund the renewable energy projects. And therefore, we do expect, and on behalf of FICCI, we have recommended to government to make certain changes so it becomes easier for foreign investors to invest. One of the key changes is policy consistency. And we would also, all the state governments to align with centre's thinking. So it can't be that center is going in one right direction and some states are going in different direction. It doesn't help. It doesn't help the consumer. It doesn't help the discoms. It doesn't help the state exchequer, and it doesn't help the industry. So in the next 1 year, what we do expect that a lot of these initiatives which have been taken by the government will actually start playing in the market. And one of the other big game changers, as my colleague from TERI mentioned rightly, would also be EV vehicles. So there has to be accumulation of everything, every aspect for us to achieve net zero and for us to live in a better, healthier climate.
Okay. There it is. Thank you so much, Mr. Narang. We'll let you go because we know you have to rush for another meeting out there. Meanwhile, we'll continue with Mr. Shirish and Urmi here as well. Urmi, as Devin was pointing out, one is the aspect of funds, and of course we've been talking about this, that this is a investment intensive sector. Just the government's funds won't be enough, so there'll have to be money which will have to come in from the private sector also. Economy of scale becomes important, and we will have to identify the lowest hanging fruits here. So what are the lowest hanging fruits?
Well, I don't think we're still in a place where we should be just identifying lowest hanging fruits, but that gets sorted out in terms of technology available, then of course where the money flows, but I think for the government, it's not about identifying lowest hanging fruit. For the government, it's about incentivizing or leveraging public money to move to the places that need it the most, because the lowest hanging fruit, private sector would move in on its own. Right? Like if you look at...
That's what I'm asking. How do you see, which might be the areas, as I was asking, Devin as well. He said EV industry is one area where there needs to be a lot of focus there.
Right. So the move is towards, so money will flow into EVs, money will
Green
flow
mobility.
into renewable energy, solar and wind, offshore wind. You'll see money flowing into that. Money will flow into hydrogen, as we have seen it's flowing. But what is the function of the government and the budget? Is actually the cue is that where is it putting its money? It is putting its money, because that take the sort of the energy security and other alternatives that are there. What does it do? It puts 35,000 crores, which is not a whole lot of money considering you need $30 billion a year, but that gives a signal to private industry that yes, this is where we are going. So that becomes critical, and that is why the budget becomes interesting. See, the budget is a year-on-year statement, right? So this year, it's not that yes, last year's budget or the incentives that were put in place or the signals that are there are dead. Those signals are there. This is the new set of signals. The question really is that do we have a plan? When you're talking about identifying low-hanging fruit or the not-so-low-hanging fruit, that can only happen through a plan. Look at the railways, for example. It got this record allocation in its capex allocation,
Indeed.
right? But there is a reason why that is possible, not just because, it's the sort of the backbone of mobility and so on and so forth, but also because the railways has a plan, a net zero plan by 2030, a net zero carbon emissions plan by 2030. So it has a plan in place. It can go to the finance minister and say, look, this is my plan. Now help me achieve it because I can't do it. So you have more money coming in, putting it in places where it can be leveraged for private. So how do you identify? Actually, you first need a plan. And the problem is that in many of these sectors, we don't have a plan, or we have sectoral plans, but we don't have an all of economy plan.
Okay.
Like, where is our version of the EU Green Deal? We need a plan which tells us, because again, see, the finance minister's budget speech nails it. It says this is a transformative agenda, green growth. Transformation is not just of one sector. She also mentions their cross-cutting, their feedback effects. So therefore, it has to be, you have to have a plan, all the aspects of a plan.
Okay. So finance minister has put before the nation.
She has, given a signal.
Put before the nation the intent of the government that this is the direction we want to go. Now the stakeholders should come up and say that, okay, this is the plan to move towards this direction. This will be the best way to move it, and then,
well, the
we can work
biggest
together.
stakeholder who has to do the planning and drive is the same government. So the government needs to now sit down and start working on a plan where it invites all stakeholders, industry, civil society, academia. Like, a big missing piece of the puzzle is money for research. Where is that money?
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Shirish here as well for concluding comments. Mr. Shirish, we always talk about, when we talk about green growth or green energy or green budget, we always talk about renewable energy, electric vehicles as well. But, some aspects which the finance minister also mentioned in the budget, and Urmi would agree with me, so, those are somehow not on the center always, aspects or concepts like green building, green equipments there as well. Other such related aspects also. So where do we stand on that, and how much push is required? Because those are also really equally important, and they'll become a part of this holistic plan which Urmi is referring to.
Yeah, I think I can give a couple of examples. As far as green building is concerned, we have our own Griha system for rating of buildings on their overall green or resource efficiency utilization. And we also have other systems, but that whole moment is picking up. Now, all the new government buildings are rated as per Griha rating system. Private sector is also looking at, getting ratings for their buildings and all. At the same time, if you look at, say, mobility, now government has announced scheme for scrapping of government vehicles, central government vehicles.
Indeed.
And there will not be one or two, there will be in thousands tens
indeed.
of thousands. And so that will create new market for EV. And also the, because those will
help push the economy of scale, which Mr. Narang was referring to. Huh?
Secondly, what I can see over a period of time, I am in the sector since 80s, and that time industry's complaint was there is no consistent policy of the government, because it was mostly subsidy driven program. So subsidy budget is limited, and to that extent the government will push the sector.
Okay.
Now it is going away from subsidies, it is going away from own funds utilization to the public funds, to the private sector investments. And this type of announcement of 2030 targets, 2070 targets definitely set a role that there is a long-term consistent policy regime is there with the government. And that thinking is very, very important.
So there is a goal which has been set. There is a outline which has been given, and transformative phase, as Urmi was referring to. All which is required is all the stakeholders to come together, make a nice, good, holistic plan about it, and then move ahead. Thank you so much, Mr. Shirish, Garud, and Urmi as well, for sharing your views and insight. I'm afraid it's a very interesting topic, but we're running short of time. We'll come back on this, and we'll of course talk about more on green growth, which is the key focus area, as our experts were pointing out, in the budget as well. One of those 7 guiding principles of the budget. And that is why today's discussion was all about what the government is planning vis-a-vis the green growth. what part of the budget can be considered as a green budget and how will it be implemented. We'll come back again with a renewed focus, a clear focus on all these very aspects of green growth. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.